Well, hello, good day, everyone. I stopped saying good morning because I'm not morning anything, so I need to say good day. And I used to have a dude that kind of menaced me that would always say good day, but I wouldn't say it because he, said it and he was like menacing me and everything. So, anyway, but now, good day, everyone. There. I finally got there. So, Ian Carroll is talking about this stuff here, and I just need to, throw my 2 cents in there. The occult knows my greater self as Mercury, and the fleshy meat sack that it's using is me, Christopher Bora. So I'm here to talk about this stuff. I had a couple videos. I kind of like, got off my chest, and I'm like, oh man, I need to compile it and figure all that shit out. And make sure the shit's in order and whatnot, and because I'm a sexual creature, like I'm one of the sexual deities. So who best to go to than this? And so I am also like a great character. I'm a balancing deity. So I don't really lean too much in any direction, actually, and I always find myself in the middle. And that's not being servile or anything. That's just what I am. So anyway, let's get to it here. I got this. We're going to set this here to 1.4 speed. All right, let's see. I'm going to back it up a little bit just in case I miss something. All right.
I am not entirely clear on whether this purchase ever actually went through. I'll look into it more. But just to wrap this up,
Go need some
and
coffee.
the gay jokes that we're making in here. If you don't know about this Wired piece about the gay tech mafia that was published at the beginning of 2026, it's quite the read. It has quite the cover art going on. It's kind of a big gossip column. It's a lot of anonymous sources, a lot of people speaking only under pseudonyms, a lot of hearsay, but it all adds up. It's all pretty obvious, and a lot of it's publicly available information. But when you put it all together, it starts to paint a sort of concerning picture. It's a little awkward to talk about because it's like, is it a horrible thing that there's gay people running companies? No, it's not. But there is an undercurrent to it. Does it get more and more sketchy when you kind of have a gay mafia style sort of relationship economy happening in one of the most important industries in the world? And are they monopolizing this industry based on their gayness or based on their merit? How much grooming is happening in this environment in Silicon Valley? How much darker
Well, let's just start off with the first point that I heard in this video, which was the grooming that I could respond to. I feel that everyone is always being groomed for everything. Everything. I see the sexual stuff no different than everything else, and I go by a consenting, non consent. Is it all right with the family? But then, if two people decide to fall in love and want to hook up, regardless, of their family wishes, like I'm just like let people do their thing. I'm not into rape or non consensual stuff, which is the vast majority of the stuff. But I just feel that the vast majority of the stuff that you guys are concerned about. But then you guys get into the weird consenting stuff that I'm like, whatever. And your guys like, no, you gotta be upset like I am, And it's like, no, I'm really not. So grooming, okay. And there was certain traumas and everything. I was an MK Ultra, Project Monarch, Mind Control, and I was really fucked with throughout all of my life because I am this special creature. So they, trying their hijacking attempts, which seems to be standard fucking practice, right? But I just feel okay. So the Amish raise children that want to work on farms and do Amish things. Cops, you kind of like the cops, firefighters, and the medical people. Like they have a kid, or I guess in the lawyers too. Like that group right there, like tends to like a cop will have a kid, and it'll be a lawyer or in the medical field or a firefighter, right? So and that's very similar, like across the board. It's not like 100%, but people are always grooming their children. Everybody's always fucking being groomed. So I don't know about this fucking just using this grooming label because you guys are always being programmed. The people around you, the things that have been done to you, everything. It's a programming, a training, or a grooming of sorts. All right? And there's a lot of good LGBTQ people out there that are LGBTQ at no fault of their own. They're just, inundated with those EMFs, the poisons in the food and the other products, and it got people out of sync. Okay? That's them being out of sync and themselves out of sync isn't really their fault. Okay? So, anyway, before I make this video 5 hours long here, let me continue.
Weirder shit, how much trafficking, how much prostitution, how much other stuff is happening because, when you look at the names on these various...
See, and that's another problem, is there is no allowance for prostitution, so therefore you turn it over to the criminals, and then any of the sex workers and prostitutes don't have any fucking protections under the law.
Lists that we're not supposed to know about on the various islands that people aren't supposed to fly to, at the various secret society gatherings that we're not supposed to understand or know about. You start to cross-reference these names. Undercurrent to it. Does it get more and more sketchy when you kind of have a gay mafia style sort of relationship economy happening in one of the most important industries in the world? And are they monopolizing this industry based on their gayness or based on their merit? How much grooming is happening in this environment in Silicon Valley? How much darker, weirder shit? How much trafficking? How much prostitution? How much other stuff is happening? Because, when you look at the names on these various lists that we're not supposed to know about, on the various islands that people aren't supposed to fly to, at the various secret society gatherings that we're not supposed to understand or know about, you start to cross-reference these names and realize that there might be something a little more nefarious to the sort of in-circle lifestyle that these guys are living. You start to wonder, does your gayness just extend to normal gayness, or is there some more power complex and sketchy weird shit going on in there? Just how dark does this get? Because there's this funny kind of touchy taboo barrier in the conversation about gay people, where it's like, yeah, gay rights, I agree. I come from the left. I have no idea at all. Having grown up...
And I'm all for the LGBTQ rights and everything, but I am not for weaponizing it, and it gets very weaponized. With the trans thing. Suddenly, you're taking drugs and hormones and messing with your body chemistry, and that means you could enter, the woman's bathroom because, you call yourself a woman. People like me would respect, that and call you a woman, but I would still say, this solves your fucking trans thing, and it's in one of my previous videos that I haven't uploaded yet that I made earlier this June. But you just need to put penises and vaginas. Penises, bathroom. Vaginas, bathroom. And then that solves it. And the only loophole for that is to get a sex change. And then there won't be women fucking recording the shadow of some dude going, jerking off some penis that entered their room. You should just boil it down to the fucking basics. And the basics are... the penis is over here and the vagina is over there. And that solves 99% of the problems there. Anyway.
Up in that sort of very liberal and...
Pardon, my video cut off, so I had to dump all this data and kind of find my way back to here. But, I was just talking how simply it was, the solution was so simple to just, penis is here, vagina's over there. Penis is over here, and vagina's over there. And you were talking about, we'll get into it, all right? We will get into it. Here we go.
Animosity towards gay people at all, but having grown up in that sort of very liberal and kind of naive perspective, and then lived in this world and sort of learned more about how power structures work and how sex trafficking works and how very powerful billionaires work, not like your average gay person, but true billionaires, you start to notice more and more that there's a lot of grooming in the gay world. You start to wonder, I don't know, this is going to be a really hateful comment. There's going to be a lot of bigotry going on here in a second, but I don't know if it's exactly clear on how many gay people are born gay. Are there really gay babies, or is it kind of weird just the huge number of gay people that do have some sexual trauma in their past that have grooming in the backstory of their gay awakening? How many of these gay people would have been gay if they'd never had that one gay relationship when they were a young teenager?
Yeah, and one thing that I was on a roll and everything before I realized that my camera wasn't recording. So anyway, I guess I consider everything grooming. You're all being programmed. You're all being groomed. All right, all the time. All right, call it grooming, call it programming, call it training, whatever the fuck. I went to this Catholic school called Notre Dame in Clarendon Hills, Illinois, in DuPage County, Illinois. And I have a few roofie recalls from that, where, you know, I'm restrained in the church, where I see the wooden beams on the ceiling of the church, and I'm surrounded by, it seems like a few classmates from all the classes there, because it was a kindergarten through 8th school. You know, I only went from kindergarten to 3rd grade. And so by this point, you know, they're already roofing me, shoving things in my ass, and down my throat. But I don't remember that, but I have the trauma responses that I didn't add up until a little bit into my 40s. What the fuck happened to me? And I always thought these things were dreams, but they weren't really dreams, because I was like Bill Cosby, right? So you're fucking with my consciousness, and then you're doing trauma that my body remembers, but my mind doesn't quite remember, you know, as part of these MK Ultras and steering. And when you're talking about grooming people and everything, a lot of these people, they're just out of sync. So they're out of sync, and you're like, well, stop being out of sync. Well, that's not a solution. That's just like you going around fucking, you know, and do some of these elites, you know, and people, you know, get people out of sync to do sexual stuff with, you know, I guess, yeah, you know, and I don't think that they're all involved. They're just used for cover, like the LGBTQ. They're just used for cover a lot of times, you know, and they're just being themselves. Sure, they're out of sync, and I don't mean to offend people, you know, with that, but they're out of sync a little bit, or a lot. Had some trauma happen to them. I enjoy, you know, stuff in my butt because people were shoving things in my butt. Now, they tried to say that, you know, like, by the 3rd grade, you know, although, like, I felt this way, you know, sooner, too. But by the 3rd grade, you know, people are teaching me, you know, if I like anal stuff, then that's gay, and if you're gay, you're bad, you know, and the kids would always write me, like, letters and shit, like, God hates me, and it'll make me cry, and I can't even remember any of that shit. I remember my family telling me that that's what would happen, and that's why I ultimately, you know, decided to go to public school in Westmont, Illinois, school district 201. I eventually transferred to from the 4th grade, you know, all the way to high school graduation. You know, because it's these religious people, these godly people that are, you know, roofie possessing me, like they did ritual possessions with me. And I believe they did that. It's just a hijack. It's just standard fucking practice, really, with these people. So they see a light spirit coming in to help y'all out, and they're like, well, what can we do to, like, you know, twist and distort it and pervert it? You know, so, and so, yeah, anyway, you know, I guess I can, I consider myself, like, heteroflexible. I guess I could do some gay stuff. You know, I prefer a woman with a strap on, though. You know, that sounds much more lovely and much more appealing to me. And I guess I could do some gay stuff too, because I've slept with both sides and everything, and yeah, you know, there's nothing I could do to, like, change that, though. People are like my facial blindness or my auditory processing disorder. I could heal my body, yes, and I could not manifest things or manifest things into reality, and I can't fix it, though. You know, people with the deep accent. You know, I hear a little, like, you know, static on my cell phone when someone's telling me their name, and I can't make it out, you know, while other people can. You know, I'm like, what, you know, a lot of times I have a harder time with more lyrics, you know, in songs than others. I'm like, what are they saying? What are they saying? And that's just something that's just not going to change. You know, so, you know, how do you, you know, proceed forward with all these people out of sync? Sorta is my thing. You know, where I feel a lot of you guys are needlessly fighting about a lot of needless shit, and then there's a million missing children, but you're all too busy fighting amongst yourselves over petty shit, you know, or shit that you shouldn't care about, but you somehow do because you were groomed. You know, like, people trying to say that my abuse or whatever was, like, the worst, or the abuse that occurred to me was the worst. shit that ever happened. And it's like, no, well, I wasn't kept in a cardboard box with an oxygen tank and shipped halfway around the world, fucking be sexually used for hundreds or thousands of days, maybe for the rest of my life. That wasn't what I experienced. And that didn't come close. And I'm not going to, start hunting mentally brain damaged people, erring adults, with a lot of your Chris Hansen petty shit. That's just circus and just show. Like it's meant to waste your time and resources. Straight up, you guys invent a problem, and then so you could invent your hero status. And there's a lot of demons in this world, and there's a lot of angels in this world, and not all the demonic stuff is like, oh, you shouldn't do. You just need to leave them alone, and they'll leave you alone, more. Sure, hunt child killers. I never hear you guys talk about that. It's always just sexual stuff needs to, and the most pettiest of sexual stuff, that I see. You guys, getting your panties in a bundle over, and inventing problems a lot. So, you're getting these people that essentially were abused for their whole life. They may or may not know it, very likely not know it. And then you guys are picking up the mantle of continuing to abuse them. And then you wonder why you're living in a hell, right?
That awoke them to their gayness. I don't know the truth one way or another, but I do know there's this really interesting quote down in here. I believe that this is attributed to another one of their anonymous sources, because they're all anonymous sources in this article, but they point out something kind of important and controversial when you really read into it. Quote, one of the key things to realize is that gays are different than straights in many different ways, says a longtime gay venture capitalist. Gays are cross-generational. Whilst straight people tend to spend more time with people their own age, that is not true with gay men. I can hang out with someone at an event who is 18 years old, and Peter Thiel might also be there. And that's a nice way of saying there's a lot of grooming in the gay community. There's a lot of older gay men grooming younger boys into lifestyle. He put the age 18, but bro, that is specifically the legal limit. Specifically, I can't help but wonder if it's always 18 and up at all of these parties, at all of these.
Yeah, and I say the 18 and up thing too lately, because people be raping me with their children into my adulthood to try to elicit an outcome. And, on top of that, my bloodline is stalked. I deal with that targeted individual shit. It's not all bad. It's not all good. So, people be really into my bloodline, no matter if, no matter how I am, because they're just into my bloodline. They know I have, the weird psychic abilities that they fucking look for that I just don't practice really. So they're interested in having a child that has this divine or alien DNA in them, but everyone does. But I mean, it was amazing that I was able to awaken after everything that was done to me, especially the bad magic that people don't believe in. A lot of people don't believe in. They're just like, whatever, you wackaloo, so I get raped by children, underage children. Did they take photos when I was all roofied? Perhaps. So I'm just not going to let that bother me, because I can't control that. I can't control, this weird secret society stuff and the occult stalking me and occasionally roofing me like once to 3 times a year, to have their way with me. Yeah, I can't control any of that stuff. So I do see that, some people are like the phrase in Game of Thrones when they were offering Lord Stark a wife and everything, and they're like, here's our 17-year-old, here's our 15-year-old, here's our 14-year-old, here's our 12-year-old, but she hasn't bled yet if you're into it, and that was that family's business. That was their thing. You speak going back to the grooming thing. It's amazing that Amish people raise children that want to do the Amish thing, and homesteading people raise children that want to live off the land and everything. And I mean, I don't know why these four are usually connected, but it's usually like within law or something, like a lawyer, the medical field, firefighters, and cops. Like they have children that want to do those things, right? And on and on and on. And I just, I don't see the sexual stuff always as different. People are trying to be willing participants. I'm just trying to keep things, definitely proper. So I'm like, I would totally fuck a college chick, and then I have a hard time telling because of my facial blindness that I have. So it's not all the time, but some of the times, a quarter, half the times, I can't tell. I'm like, are you 16 or 20? I can't tell. And if they had some young ones at a sex party or something that were like legal and everything, I may think that they were underage just because I have the fucking facial blindness thing going on. And it goes in the other direction too. I talk about this time where I am, handing out free samples in a grocery store, and you need to be 15 or older, to get a sample by yourself. So this chick comes up to me, this girl, and I'm like, "Are you with your parents?" Because she wanted a sample and everything. And I'm like, "Are you with your parents?" And she's like, "Look, I'm like 20. I'm 23." And I'm like, "What? Fuck no, fuck you." I didn't say that, but I was definitely thinking that. And she carded herself, like she busted out her ID, and I'm like, oh shit, I guess. So anyway, they caused us brain damage. I went to this one other family that did some roofie possessing and probably sexual abuse to me when I was all roofied. Got upset when I would get my own glass of water. And they'll correct it right away, but it was like that subtle behavior that you notice from like the Erica Kirks and all that shit. Like, why are you getting upset? Like, when I get my own water, they usually prepared it for me. And I would only get massive migraine headaches at this one dude's house, right? Well, that was people poisoning me with heavy metals, likely lead, but other things too. And then that's why Flint, Michigan's water is up. I wonder if the sex offender or the pedos or the endos, and I make the distinction too, because some people, like, okay, before I was self-aware of this, and I did very well, you guys might have been able to easily Matt Gaetz me and send an underager with a fake ID to try to get some blackmail on me. But now that I'm self-aware, that's going to be much harder. But, Matt Gaetz fucking fucked a 16-year-old. Oh, but it was okay because she had a fake ID. Well, then that's the U.S. intel community shit. You mean they're going to make it okay because you guys get a fucking fake ID? And I think that situation with Matt Gaetz or whatever, that was fine. Everyone was consenting. She knew what she was doing. That was like her family's business, I guess. We got to try to get blackmail and everything, but everybody's fucking consenting. You guys like only consent to the punching down stuff when you bring an underager into the store to buy cigarettes or alcohol, and then you change the point of sales equipment for the fucking clerks so you could, make them look bad and everything. Because that happened to me once where I sold cigarettes to someone that was 17 instead of 18 out in Illinois. And they had literally changed the point of sales equipment like a week before, maybe 2 weeks prior. But it stopped telling you, like, when you scan the cigarettes, hey, before this day, just to kind of remind you and everything. You're just mindlessly operating the machine. Just like people mindlessly watched everyone, throw a girl off of fucking a bridge without the bungee cord attached. Just mindlessly doing things. So they change that, and then I'm having a hard time. And then they send in this one person, and their birthday was on that day, and it confused me with my math because I'm just being mindless about it. And, oh, you invented a problem, and, and here's the solution. So there's a bunch of erring people. Like, if you're not going to address the Catholic Church mass-scale molestation, and you're just going to pick on the people that are erring as a result of it, out of sync, not really an error, you're just out of sync. You're out of sync. I was younger, and I would have, very likely, licked an older female's vagina. Not that they need to be grandma or anything, but I would have, there was a lot of teachers that I was like, oh, fuck, not that the teacher thing is all right too, because that's a position of power and you shouldn't abuse your power like that. But, I was, really horny, and there was, some, a decade or two older than me that I would have just loved to fuck. And then people would have groomed me into, oh my God, that, abuse that happened to you was so horrible and blah, 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 blah. And that's the trap that I think Virginia Giuffre fell into, where she was like, oh my God, there's all this worse stuff and child eating and child sacrifices and horrible torture of children and fucking children, and teenagers being kept underground and fucking abused. And it's like, but let's try to find an adult with this, Chris Hansen, How to Catch a Predator. Let's try to find an adult and create a situation and just make ourselves feel good, really. And then you're still not addressing any of that bigger stuff. You're just fighting amongst yourselves. You're fighting amongst yourselves. And this life and everything, these fleshy meat sacks, you are meant to make choices, not have choices forced upon you, either by the good side or the bad side. Okay, you have this choice to make, and people don't like that. People don't like actual freedom. People are like, oh my God, this is very questionable. Yeah, people fucking groomed me by raping me with their children, causing me brain damage, and then people are going to harp on me because I could fucking fuck a college chick. Not that I would want to really date one. That sounds really annoying, actually, because we don't have anything in common, like growing up on shows and music and everything. It's just like way different, and it's like, and I would like to be in sync with someone more closer to my age, but I'm interested in the sex party stuff, but not the child murder, and yeah, so I am going to try to go to a sex party. That seems like the most appropriate moment. Someone just trying to have some fun. You see it in movies all the time. There was an underager or just of ager, and they slept with an adult, and you guys are acting like that's like the fucking worst stuff ever. Like it's being trapped in a fucking container with an oxygen tank, and you're being shipped across the fucking country. Those are two totally different fucking things, and that's where the light side fucking loses me, But anyway, let's continue here.
Quiet little gatherings. The article does describe how in Silicon Valley there's a gay party for everything. There's an exclusively gay network. You're only invited to the parties if you're gay. There's no women present. You can read it for yourself. I don't want to go through all the details. It's mostly just hearsay, but it all checks out. And it all centers pretty much around Peter Thiel and his homies, his boys. But others are mentioned, obviously, like Sam Altman is mentioned. A bunch of them are mentioned. And when you couple that with the Dialogue Society, it kind of gets you wondering. And listen, just to clarify one more time, I'm sure I'll get a lot of hate for those comments about gay people. I don't hate gay people. The difficult conversation to have sometimes is that it's not, strictly speaking, natural. It's not the evolutionary path that humans are intended to take, because y'all don't make babies. Okay, let's just
yeah. But we're not even talking like about making babies, except in some cases like mine where people are trying to have a child of God out of me or a child of possession, so they try to David Koresh me, and I can't be that upset. When I was talking about that phrase stuff, I can't be that upset about it either. So I'm just like, I really feel I'm being very emotionally intelligent and mature about all of this stuff. And, so someone, at a food pantry, had their child dressed like a complete slut, like a see-through skirt, like clear see-through skirt. And then she did the whole nice necklace thing. They do things to targeted individuals to, they let you know that they're, and they'll be like, if you have like to carry a pen around, they'll be like, hey, nice pen, and then everyone in town is like, hey, nice pen. And so what they do to me is, well, I used to wear a mask and everything because I thought it looked mysterious and cool and whatnot and ninja-like. But I stopped wearing the mask. But when I was wearing it, they were like, hey, nice mask. They get everyone in town to just random, kids, adults, everybody, nice mask. At the fucking workout place, at the fast food place, at the grocery store, hey, nice mask. To let to kind of show you, that the Matrix, and their power and everything. It's all sort of weird psychological warfare stuff. So they sent me this chick that was like dressed like a slut, and she's like, nice necklace, and I'm like, and I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, in 2 or 3 years, fine, because they're trying to seek the breeding stuff. I'm not that much into blackmail. I'm not trying to be improper. I'm just, I'm a little out of sync and I'm self-aware. And I don't think it's really that wrong to bring 18, 19, and 20-year-olds around to a party or a sex party if they just want to try things out. And you guys act and pretend like that's the fucking worst shit ever. And then you fall into the trap that Virginia Giuffre fell in, and you're victimized and the endless victim complex. And yeah, I'm not saying what happened to her was right, but she was like, hey, there's all this worse stuff up over here. But anyway, let's just talk about my shit that I survived that wasn't as worse as that shit over there. But, here, let me just get caught up and da-da-da-da-da. And, and then we're just fighting ourselves and we're not solving anything. And then there's 1 million missing children a year. But you guys care so much about the children, but you just care really just about fighting amongst yourselves. And it's like, it's a shit show. It's a fucking shit show. It gets to the point where there was that expensive tastes on TikTok that was talking about the Stephen King book, and this shit happens in real life too, but I mean the supernatural stuff, but just like the normal stuff that he complained about. And he's like, oh my God, do you know that the children had sex with the children and they were all okay with it and everything? And it's like, what was fucking 60-year-old Tom Hanks supposed to be there? What the fuck? What the fuck? This is some psyop shit, right? You're like fucking with me, right? People like this, I suspect, eat children. And they like to have that, cover of their out of sync people. So it's not the out of sync people that is the problem. The problem would be people like this. He's probably involved, with that group that's involved in the Catholic Church that mass scale molest everybody. But it's like not every day. It's just like once, 2, 3 times a year. So yeah. Like when I say keep it above 18, it's because I literally, have been getting roofie raped by children, underage children, into my adulthood. So I'm like, okay, I see you're trying to elicit a response, caused me brain damage. I'm self-aware of it. My soul even made this journey so I could explain this shit for you people. So yeah. And then people pretend like, oh, I have the ability to fuck a young college girl, that, you might as well get your 6 or 7-year-old all dressed up like a slut and just dangle them around me like it's the same shit. And it's not. And that's why I distinguish. And there's a word. There's the endophilia and then the pedophilia. And everybody's like, it's the same. And it's really not. And it's really not. Your 16-year-old might look, older to me, and I might think they're like legal. Your 23-year-old might look like a child to me. Yeah, it's just something that actually got brain damaged into me. And again, I'm not trying to be improper or anything. I am definitely trying to find someone of age to have fun with, and whether, because I'm a little out of sync, they might be a little out of sync. Dating seems a little too much, but sure, I'm a little spiritual entity, so they want to manifest and do magic with me, because some secret societies are into that, and I can't see that as something horribly bad either. I just, kindly ask, above 18. And so that's how we got into this whole thing, because he's like, it's nefarious. They're always saying over 18, and it's like, well, this is some of the reason why. All right, because people are out of sync, and even those 18-year-olds are out of sync, but they have choices to make while they're out of sync. They're not your choices to force upon them. It's their choices to make. And then when you start talking like that and thinking like that, it's like, oh my God, does that sound like freedom? Could you guys understand what freedom actually is and peace looks like in a world full of angels and demons? I don't think all the demons eat children, is the thing. There's a lot of demons that make scary shit, that they get off on, scaring you. And a lot of you people go to those places because you like being scared. And that seems like a healthy, middle ground, at least, So I don't think all the demons like that one are eating children. But that one uses the cover of the erring ones to, and maybe some of them are in on it, but really, I think the vast majority of them are not. They're not aware. They're just been exposed to a ton of chemicals and poisons and bad frequencies, which is another poison. Pardon me. And they've been exposed to a lot of poisons, and they're out of sync. They had some abuse that happened to them. They may not remember it. They may remember it, and they have the right to just like live life and have fun. And there's this weird spiritual stuff that is going around too, where they like to breed child of gods or child of possessions. And I mean, I grew up with my parents breeding cats. They had a cattery, and they just cared about having a breed and everything. Sometimes they would have an older male breed a younger female, because that's what they're into. And yeah, so, but I'm not trying to fucking, be really improper like some people are. Like some people, are just like, my facial blindness, I can't tell if your 16-year-old is, your 16-year-old could look like 20, or your 20-year-old could look like 16, to me. And I'm like, I can't tell. I can't fucking tell. So, and a lot of you motherfuckers, I'm looking for a connection with someone or some fun with someone, and then, there's one side, like the child protectors that take things too far, and then there's the pedophiles and endophiles that are fucking trying to breed me, and they're like, look, this one just bled a couple years ago, and then I can't be that upset about that either, it's like, okay, well, whatever, but let's watch some more. Here.
Just be clear, y'all don't make babies. And so if we all are gay, we raise hands, right?
Yes, we don't make babies, but that's not the point of the whole thing. I wanted to really say something about this. So yeah, it's about sexual energy and magic and manifestation, which is a point that I never heard you guys ever talk about. So I'm just coming at it from a different disco ball perspective, because I'm over here and you all are over here. So yeah, but they're made up too much population stuff. That is a little bit helpful, yes. Yeah. But besides, I wouldn't want to bring a child into this world. You guys fucking do your normalized sexual abuse, like chop the end of the penis off and shit. Most of your males, and that's not abuse somehow, but some high schooler hooking up with the college person, or a junior higher hooking up with the fucking high schooler. Those are the fucking issues. And then the expensive tastes, like I said earlier, he's like, oh my God, the children with the children. And it's like, you're gaslighting me, right? That sounds like the most ideal fucking situation. You guys teach how to take life and how to do negative things, and you teach those things to your children, but you don't really, not a lot of you, maybe the Jehovah's Witnesses and other, groups and everything, teach their kids about life and sex. But we're like ladies over here, men over here, instead of saying vaginas over here and penises over here, that would solve the whole fucking trans thing right there. Boom. The trans in the bathroom. You got to have penis to come in here. You got to have vagina to come here. Boom. That solves like 99% of the problems. And then you can't twist and distort, because they're doing that, using weaponizing the acceptance and everything. And oh, well, you're really a woman. You just started taking HRTs. You should go use the fucking woman's restroom right now. And they get people to do those things because they are very out of sync and mind controlled at no fault of their own. In the vast majority of those cases, no fault of their own. So, and it's like, it reminds me a lot of the Chris Hansen thing, where you guys invent a problem, and here, I got this clip here.
I know, it's not.
He puts the suitcase down. And it's a whole clip. And it's a whole clip of people, being fooled by the suitcase. And now I believe in manifestation and whatnot, and I talk trash, or not talk trash, but I get cocky with the occult and everything that's up my ass and up a lot of other people's asses too. And I'm like, you're going to pay me. You're going to pay me, and I try to manifest that, and I believe in that stuff. And so, what if these people here are trying to manifest? They're down on their luck. They're trying to manifest some money, and then someone comes by and drops a suitcase right next to them, and then they're like, "Oh my God, this must be my manifestation right here." And they get excited, and they're like, "Hell yeah!" Maybe they realize that they're being fucked with by the occult, and they're like, "I demand money," and then like I'm not really into this. This is very similar to finding someone in your neighborhood that's looking for a free bike and everything, and then you put a bait bike on their front porch. The one thing in this clip, they had a backpack tied to a string that was tied to like some tree or something, and the guy tried running off with it, and then he got caught up by the thing, and that was proper. That was pretty funny, but also you do this around a lot of people, and everyone in America is very desperate, financially desperate. A lot of people are trying to pray for a miracle, and then a suitcase shows up in front of you, and you're like, "Oh my God, that's my miracle." But then you twist it around into being like, what a piece of shit they are for fucking doing that. Yeah.
And so, personally, I've just always had a bit of a problem with people that live these sort of like deeply alternative lifestyles. It's way more obvious with trans people that advocate for more of that. All good that you're gay, bro. Don't care. That's cool. You're just a person. Be a good person. You're good with me. But like, it's kind of weird when we start advocating for more gay people. It's kind of weird when we start advocating. It's super weird. It's actually fucking criminal, in my opinion, when we start advocating for more trans people. Because by your own admission, trans is a very hard lifestyle. It's very hard on you. There's a reason why trans people have the highest suicide rate. You can argue about why that is, but it's not an easy life, right? And I'm not saying this to hate on trans people specifically, although I find the militant ones to be abhorrent. But it's oxymoronic to be that way and to have and this is obviously I'm talking about trans people, not gay people, but it's a little oxymoronic, a little hypocritical to talk about how it's so hard to be trans that I need to cut off my genitals to fix my life, and then to, in the same event, breath, speech, whatever you're doing, to say, let's have more trans people. It's good to be trans. Doesn't square. It's not good to be trans. If you are trans, get on with your life, be a good person, do your best, try to be happy, and just chill. Just chill, bro. Just chill. Just fit in and do your best and be a good person. But don't advocate for kids to become trans, you goddamn asshole. That's evil. And I can't help but feel...
Well, look. If they want to have a family and whatnot, like they didn't chop off their penis and they could, ejaculate inside of a vagina, or they stored their eggs or sperm before any operation, and if they found some surrogates to have a child for them, if they want to teach their family that, that's their family's business, right? You want to teach your kids to not do that, right? And that's freedom, right there. Now, yeah, I do agree with they're like, this is such a hard life and everything, and then we want more of you. I think it's just a distortion with all the cell phone towers and all your massive poisonings, and then you're out of sync, and then it's an option that's available that they kind of push to you, and they shouldn't be going behind the family's back in the name of child protection. We're just trying to protect the child if they want to fucking do trans stuff at 15 or 14 or something, or younger. That's that family's business, but and it's that family's business if they don't want to do that trans stuff. And they should know and not use child protection to sneak behind the parent's back and fucking inject your child with testosterone or estrogen. All right? It's pretty simple. Pretty simple, right? And anyway, let's hear the rest of this here.
A little bit of that in the gay community as well. And in this kind of gay tech mafia grooming cults thing. And like, you're much more likely to get into Silicon Valley if you're gay. You're much more likely to get into these secret societies if you have sexual proclivities that go along with it. And I think probably.
Yeah, I know. And I was thinking of, some interesting sex parties myself, because I see the game, although I'm going to play it my way and start doing it better. I might participate in a homosexual party. and I may very well participate in like a bisexual sex party. They have some, things around town here that, around every town, really. And and yeah, so I was going to, give a little to get a little, instead of being constantly roofie raped too. I was thinking about partaking in some weird fantasies that I have gotten since I was like a fucking child, or tween at least. And partake in some of my weird fantasies in a proper. Pardon everyone, I got cut off. So I was, thinking about joining a party to partake in a, sexual experience on my own terms in a proper way. And that, isn't that evil or wrong of me. I've been, abused or groomed or out of sync in a certain way, and I'm just trying to make the best of it, is all. Like we all are. And yeah, so that kind of threw me out of sync, having to restart the video yet again because I ran out of space. So here, let's check this out.
Just my outside view. Some of those cultures and societies group up around gayness. Some of them group up around pedophilia and what Epstein was into. Some of them group up around other blackmailable traits. And some of them just group up around being a piece of shits that are power hungry. Dialogue Society seems to have a little bit of all of it. Can't really tell what it is. All we have is these few leaks, these lists of names, and some pretty sketchy subtext kind of written in below. But for now, I'm sure it's all good that Peter Thiel and Palantir are building out the surveillance state that's going to rule the world, that they're having a secret society meeting with all the most important powerful people in government, finance, tech, media, etc.
Yeah, and he's kind of, is able, thankfully, to make distinctions to Ian Carroll and probably, people in between him and I and around us and whatnot. So that's good, at least, I just would like to speak, on, being, constantly abused. And it does come from a lot of the so-called child protectors, because like I'm like, oh yeah, I could, fuck a college girl, so therefore, you might as well dangle your 6-year-old in front of me, and it's like, and it's really not the same stuff, and that's why I feel a lot of it is misdirected. That's why you have a million missing children per year, and you guys are like, oh my God, there's a high schooler with the junior high, or a high schooler with the college. And you guys are just like fighting these things, and fighting amongst yourselves. I'm one of those ESP creatures, so you partake in the psychological warfare of me because I sense that shit. I can't. Oh, I'm like, are these, the child pedophiles that are offering me, or are these like, the child protectors that are, fucking with me? And I sense it in either case. And that's why you guys do stupid shit like gather some children up to put them in front of me at the Jimmy Dore show, some 6-7-year-olds, because, children that young watch Jimmy Dore. And they were the only kids there. I wonder how many, live events Jimmy Dore has done, and they brought in some innocent looking family. Like, I just saw that thing on the fucking internet. That 71, Jewish schoolgirls fucking coming out of the fucking sewer. That is not 71 innocent schoolgirls. All right? Were they on their way to, like, rape someone that was, like, some roofied adult under the ground there somewhere? Multiple adults? Just turning adults? Maybe older? I mean, they're doing some weird shit. That isn't some innocent shit. They're like, oh, they got lost. I don't buy that shit. Like, you got lost with, like, a small group of people, not 70 fucking one. That was some weird intent. And maybe they legitly got lost on their way to some occult ritual. And then they leave that part out. They're like, they got lost on their way to the occult ritual that we're going to have to schedule for some other time. Right? That was not 71, innocent schoolgirls. All right. And it goes on like adults get roofie raped by underagers. Like that's and when you're adding all these puzzle pieces up, I'm offering a few puzzle pieces, and everyone has their puzzle pieces, and it starts to make the bigger picture, and it's like, well, of course they do, you know. So yeah, again, you know, I would have been fine, especially at 18, 19, 20 years old. I would have been fine fucking a 40-year-old. All right. I would have loved to have gone to a sex party back then, but I wasn't really sexually healed back then like I am now. I was having bad feeling orgasms most of my life until a little bit into my 40s. And if people weren't such pussies about things and, wait for someone else to train your child sexually, yeah, and you should educate your child yourselves. That's your responsibility as a parent. As uncomfortable as the Rothschilds and bankers and society has made you be about that, you guys just need to talk about that stuff. Say the words penis on penis's room, vagina's room, or penis's bathroom, vagina's bathroom, and then you're not having some weird guy that just started hormone replacement therapy within the past 24 hours, and now he's using the female's bathroom, but he's wearing, a woman's dress, and then you see him going like this in the bathroom, but you just see the shadow, through, because there's usually a light above, so it does create a shadow. And yeah, so then you're not in those weird situations, and stop being pussy about shit. Why did I have to learn? Oh, shit. Why did I have to wait to learn until my fucking 40s that wetting the bed till high school was a sign of some sort of abuse? Why? Because you'd rather have me airing and some sort of person to attack for some of you, to just entertain yourselves. And then there's the pedo whisperers amongst the mob of so-called child protectors, that somehow, a million missing children go per year. That's the rough thing about missing children, is it happens in the moment, and you got to be paying attention. Like, we all weren't paying attention when we were holding that girl above our heads and threw her off a bridge without the fucking bungee cord. People aren't paying attention. And that could be at no fault of your own as well, because they have all these bad frequencies out there, puts you on a low vibration. They build these massive data centers, sends out a bunch of negative energy and signals and sounds and light that you can't even see, like radio light and like every other spectrum that's not visible light, which is the majority of light. So you can't see the majority of the world. And these scientists do give clues, scientists that could be in on the cover-ups and everything very well. But they give you these clues where you can't see most of reality. And so there's all these weird signals going off and making people not pay attention and slightly out of sync, and then you guys are fighting amongst yourselves, and it doesn't seem too productive. And then you're doing your Chris Hansen shows, but there's still a million missing children per year. You know what? I just remembered. I saved this too. This guy was like in the woods. Check it out though. Like, really. Yeah, kitty. I got you. Come here. So
somebody help me figure out what this is.
Yeah, I see a couple vents right over there. I see another vent over there. I see a third one over there.
Figure out what this is.
Maybe it's a storage area and there's a bunch of children and teenagers under there, because that looks like a roof that's designed to look like a foundation. So-called child protectors. You're just walking in the woods, found a little hideout to keep their fucking kidnapped children. And you're all like, what is this? I'm weirded out. We gotta fucking get someone that looks really young to fucking, pretend that they're really young online and lure some in. Because we gotta catch those million, missing children. Oh, but that shit doesn't solve any of that at all? Well, whatever. You know, I mean, you guys wonder, like, I'm a reflector of your world, but shit that you guys do reflects on me, and shit that I do reflects on you. And it's no wonder that I have a masturbation problem, because you guys have a, masturbation problem with that shit too. But it's not, as sexual, although it involves sexual stuff, but like sexual shaming, you know. And you like to invent problems, so then you can invent your hero status. And meanwhile, missing million children. Let's not talk about the worst stuff. Let's just, I was sexually abused and everything. And it's like, I don't want to live like that forever. I learned that people were trying to twist and pull me in certain ways, not only just with the really young stuff. But you're trying to make me a mass shooter. You're trying to get me to harm myself, especially through school. But they did the voice to skull shit with me too, especially back in my 20s. Stuff that Julian Assange experienced. I went through some recent direct energy weapon attacks too, over the past few years, but the height of it was like in 2022, 2023. People poisoning me with chemicals through my walls that like stains my shit, and then have everyone deny it like I'm a fucking crazy person. And just showing, like in the Game of Shadows, the Sherlock Holmes Game of Shadows movie, where that guy tapped the glass and then everyone left because everyone was in on it. And they do that sometimes to us targets, and then you can't really convince people that it's really happening. I mean, there's some of you that are red pilled, but there's a whole lot of you that are fucking blue pilled. And speaking of blue pills, there's this lovely neighbor that I have. And, she, I feel they use these direct energy weapons. She had a brother that committed suicide. And they do try to get you to harm yourself with these weapons and everything. And how they can make your mood and everything. And they can beam thoughts and voices into your head and everything. And I'm like, I think there's a lot of racism out there because she's black. So, and she's like the type of person that, like, she can't see how removing menthol cigarettes is actually, like, really racist, but they always, like, mask it in the child protection, and they themselves could create, like, strawberry flavor cigarette, or cigarette paper companies, or vapes, or whatever. The racists could create those companies. Let's make a bubblegum flavor, let's make it this flavor, let's make it that flavor, and then we could, now that we set up all these flavors, now we could lump menthol into there too and do our racist shit without ever admitting to it. Is their fucking way of doing things without ever admitting to it, like the exact opposite of me. Yeah, by the way, I'm not into rape or anything like that. I'm not into roofing raping. I'm not into raping others. In fact, I have a very hard time, unless we have a regular sexual relationship, I have a very hard time asking the first time. In fact, the first time I have sex with anyone for the first time is going to have to come from the female, as always. As always. And I'm not going to worry that much about this weird grooming experience I had, because there was one time I did, like, hit on a chick, and I was like, hey, do you want to go somewhere and fuck? And then, I mean, we ended up dating a few years later, but then I got in a bunch of trouble and everything for it. So then, like, me trying to be blunt, and direct about things, was somehow bad. And it was just a classmate of mine that was, like, that I kind of crushed on. But anyway, I'm a little weird autistic, so I was like, yeah, you want to go somewhere and fuck? And people act like that's like the worst thing ever. Pretend. All these little pretendings that these things that are not really worst things are somehow the worst things is just, it's fucked up, but it's part of the pedophiles that hide amongst the child protectors, right? About steering the mob, and trying to get reaction out of people, and misdirect them a whole lot. So here.
Not telling you about it. I'm sure it's all good that Joe Lonsdale, frequent flyer to these secret society meetings here, is also out on Twitter doxing 19-year-olds for saying anything bad about Jewish people. Yeah, this is the club. This is the deep state. And perhaps lastly, let me see if I've got it open here. This is one of my biggest, most robust canvases I've ever built. Way back to the old school, to the TikTok era. This is my research canvas about the various globalist organizations, think tanks, that...
Yeah, I didn't really want to comment on his whole video here, which is called Recent Peter Thiel Allegations Are Insane. That was really uploaded on the 18th of June, 2026. But anyway, let me get rid of all those tabs I got. Like, I'm trying to get away from this electronic shit too. And then, I just like, I'm like, here, I'll check it out later. I'll put it in a tab. And then I never check it out. My kitty is getting really playful with their paper bag. So, yeah, I just wanted to explain some of this stuff because this is my thing, I guess, and they had already done this shit to me. I was completely unaware of it. I even did this Craigslist job where I was like waving a sign for Mattress Firm. And I always thought it was weird because I didn't see many people buying mattresses just like everyone else, right? And I worked at like 7 different pizza places. And no, I had no idea that I'm like involved in all this weird occult shit, right? Like my family was in a cult. I think they did some weird stuff with me, but they were like sending me girls my age when I was a boy. And I think they tried doing something sexual with me, but it was very traumatic for me because I have a hard time doing sexual things, right? So... and then they kind of like mass scale molest everyone to kind of find ones like us, to verify, to find ones like us that are trying to help you out. Because I had this whole like, I'm trying to run for president and do all these Jesus-like things until like recently I learned, where the current standards of being president is you have to like, you like eat children, fuck them, and do other horrible, torturous things. And I'm like, I'm just not into all that, and so there, even though people could fool me with their almost adults as an adult, oh my God, by causing me brain damage. And I start adding all these things up and everything. And it's like, it's just people doing shit to me, and it's not really me doing shit to others. Like, the child protectors take things way to the extreme. There was this house a couple houses down from me. I had another roofie recall that I was in their, king or queen size bed in their master bedroom. And then later on in life, they forced me, magicians forced me watching their little daughter that it was like the most uncomfortable babysitting experience I ever had. And like, I don't really like watching over children because you guys do weird things to me, and that's no fault of my own. You guys do weird things with me, some of you, but it's enough to make me go, like, keep your children away from me, like, straight up. Like, but not because I'm a threat, but because fucked up things happen from other people's children to me. You see how, I know someone's probably going to clip that and make whatever, and then get AI to, get Chris to say whatever. To distort the message. But yeah, like, I don't see it all as the same. I see it as just kind of leave it up for the families, regardless of all your laws. So then you can focus on like the child kidnappers and, stuff that's hard to catch. You got to be paying attention. You can't just be looking at your phone all the time. You got to pay attention. Maybe ask people like, is this your parent? Ask kids, right? And yeah. But you're not going to solve all that child eating, child murder, child sacrificing stuff if you guys are busy fighting amongst yourselves over a lot of made up stuff or stuff that you could just like, well, that's the family's business. I knew one of my girlfriends. She was like 12, 13 years old, and she, was at her house, and there was a worker there, a young adult, that she had a sexual experience with, and she told me that. And, I don't want to hate on her for that. I don't think that was really, really that, it was pretty extreme, you could say, but that was their business. They had their weird experience. They seemed fine with it, and that was, boom, that was that. Instead of inventing issues for you guys, you guys get really caring with the laws. Eventually, it's going to be illegal. You're going to be a sex offender for fucking breastfeeding. No, they're trying to fucking push y'all that way because they got y'all to agree to a whole bunch of shit like that's anti-freedom. Like, and I'm like, there's a whole bunch of non-sexual stuff that this freedom also applies to. You could take this, open view of the, leave it up to the families and the participants view that I have to the non-sexual stuff as well, right? And that's where like all the golden treasure for the light side is at. But as I said earlier in one of these clips here, you guys like to have problems. You guys like to invent problems. You know, much like that fucking, this one here. People are down and out. People are down and out. All right. They're praying for a miracle. They're trying to manifest some money and everything. Someone puts a suitcase right next to them and walks away. Maybe they're even dealing with some of the occult stuff, right? And they're being cocky and they're like, pay me, and so these these very well could be people that are they're praying for a miracle, and then a suitcase shows up and they're like, fuck, hell yeah, my miracle here. And you just invented a problem, and you don't look really good, and I totally don't agree with calling the cops on any of this stuff. None of those bait packages, like when you detonate the bait package on the person and it gets in their face and all over their body and inside their vehicle, and a lot of them, that was punishment enough. When you involve the cops, then you just invented the problem because you put the package right there, and yeah, you're trying to do your stuff, but you invented the problem right there. You people are desperate, and you put the stuff right there, and yeah, and you guys will do the bait stuff, but I'm like, hey, how about like robots that like a robot to be like a bait for some of the people that are into that, and you're like, oh hell no. And it's like, well, why not? It's a robot, and a lot of your AI shit is demonic, so they'll totally be into it. They'll totally be into that, right? And, but you'll be like, no, because, they'll just encourage it. But it'll just be a decoy for, one of your many erring, folks. It's why I got sent to jail multiple times and shit, because people are trying to, Chris deserves it and blah, blah, blah. And so I get attacked, and then I end up in jail, and then I see some, sex offenders that are literally mentally handicapped. They're literally mentally handicapped. What did you get them on, some digital material that they never made? They're like, well, viewing it, means that you're fucking, oh, you mean all the dead child porn that you fucking put on fucking social media over the especially the Palestinian genocide and shit? You mean that? Like viewing, horrible material where all the children are fucking dead. But in the other one, the one that you guys got all these mentally handicapped people on, all the children are alive. Right, and people are like, well, that's I think it's all invented, and I'm just, they go around. That was one thing that they did to me as a child, is they showed me their picture books of child porn in the 80s, right, on top of raping me, jerking their dog off in front of me, doing very inappropriate things to me. So I turned out really well, and I know, people that are wanting to attack me will pretend otherwise. And I'm just, trying to, go about it as the weird deity stuffed into a fleshy meat sack as I can, and I can't be too offended about the people seeking to breed me, even if they're like, our daughter just bled, and I'm like, okay, well, that's still, I'm a little freak. I'm a little freak. I enjoy large dildos, really large dildos. So when you send me, very sexually inexperienced people, that's very, just kind of like a turn offy. I'm not one of those, I need to have a virgin and the youngest virgin ever. That's like some Zionist shit. But then you guys pretend that the other stuff, even I would give leeway to almost adults with adults, especially young adults. How many times have you given your kids alcohol? Would you guys, that was your business, your family's business. It's the same across the board, especially during the holidays where you let them have a beer or some hard alcohol or some wine or something, right? You wouldn't want to be thrown in jail for distributing drugs to a minor, but that was just your family's business, right? right? And then you leave it up to the family business and you leave it up to the participants. Well, maybe the participants having, more sway because there could be a 15-year-old and a 19-year-old that are just in love with each other, and maybe we shouldn't have the parents interfere with that, but make sure the parents are there, so they're like, okay, well, we don't want to bring our children to Disneyland because we don't want that pedophile experience. But maybe you do want to bring your 7-year-old, to Disney for the pedophile experience. And those things are your business. I'm not going to change Disneyland or Hollywood, which is both pedowood. I'm not going to change those things. I'm not going to change all the cops involved. I'm not going to change all the DAs and lawyers under them involved, secretly involved. They'll never admit to it, right? I'm not going to change all the politicians and leaders involved, right? So I'm just going to be like, okay, well, I don't want the pedophile experience, so I'm going to go to Neverland Ranch, right? Because that's what Michael Jackson did, because he saw all that stuff, and everyone, labeled him a monster when, it's just you're not quite playing ball and everything, so they fucking get the mob, their pedo whisperers in there to attack you or whatever target, I don't play ball, so when they were doing that voice call stuff, they were offering me these things, and they're like, we'll let you get away with it. And I'm just like, no, like, it's like, we'll let you get away with robbing a bank. And it's like, yeah, I'm not really that interested in robbing a bank, but maybe for national security, we should do better job securing the banks instead of having them control everything. We should be in charge of that shit. And then, all the bankers could go hang out at the Rothschild Island, maybe in Florida, and give them a place over in California where there's the pedowood, Hollywood, is what you guys know it as. And stuff like that. And I'm just like, this is how you kind of settle things and make things more peaceful. I referenced that Eyes Wide Shut, or it was two scenes really, when he went to the rainbow shop for the costume and his daughter was playing with somebody. I don't think that was being sold, but maybe it was being sold, but that was that family's business. And if she was consenting to it and like, hey, look, I can make a lot of money and do this, she seemed, like that seemed like a demonic family doing their little demonic things. And that was not a situation where she was being stuffed in a box and had an oxygen tank and being carted halfway around the world, or she was being sacrificed, like stabbed to death, or, her skin peeled off or whatever very slowly, or something, horrific, torturous that led to death. None of that shit. And you guys, like, you need to focus on the missing 26 minutes or half hour about, in that movie that they cut out, as the worst stuff. Yeah, you shouldn't sell your child and everything either. Like, that was weird at the end of the movie, but they're like, maybe like it was a threat, like you have to sell your child or you have to sell your wife, otherwise, we'll kill you or all you. It was something weird like that, right? So yeah, and things could be a little bit more complicated than they seem to be. I wanted to comment on just some of that stuff. I don't think it's all the LGBTQ people. I just think it's people out of sync. It's a lot of people out of sync, and they are still out of sync, and they get older. And then there's younger people out of sync, and they're a little bit younger, and whatever. Like, I would have, very likely hooked up with a 40-year-old had I not been so, sexually weird. Like, it's hard for me to have sex with others. That's just that. I'm trying to be a little bit more liberated, but I just always had a hard time, and people have noticed this when I was young, and people roofing, shoving things in my ass when I'm at Catholic school is way fucked up. It's way fucked up. I guess they didn't murder me, so they got that. I'll give them that, right? Because there are ones that fucking rape the child and then murder them, and it's like, well, I mean, maybe if they could live, that would be a lesser offense. So I was even one of those adrenochrome kids. They scare the shit out of me, suck my blood and everything, of course, right? Because I'm Mercury, right? And they did all that shit to me, and I know I turned out very well. I don't need anyone's affirmations or confirmations or anything. I know I turned out very well because, I mean, they tried to make me a mass shooter. They tried to get me to be a Jeffrey Dahmer. They threw the fucking book of How to Make a Monster at me, and they threw it at me when I'm 5 years old, and people are doing weird, fucked up shit to me. People are keeping things from me, keeping me from being healed, keeping me from learning things just because you want someone to attack. And it's all this downward punching shit that I fucking see. Anyway, and I can't be that upset about some of the stuff too. All right. It would have been nice if you sent me a slutty dressed 15 or 16-year-old when I was 15 or 16. Thanks for tossing it to me in my 40s, but still wait a fucking couple years till you're 18. And if you look too young, I'm going to need 2 forms of ID, please. But I'm sure that's no problem for the fucking spies amongst the whole population. So I just, I'm not into blackmail. No. Even, if you guys, and I'm pretty sure you did, roofie raped me in my 20s and you took photos because that was the time where my butt wasn't lubed up, but there was some weird substance on my penis. And it's like, oh, was I passed out and then someone was trying to rub their shit on me, making me look awake? Did they now get their AIs to make it look like I'm awake? And that's all stuff outside of my control, even though I recently became self-aware of something that happened to me decades before. And that was a decade before I even tried running for president and doing all these Jesus-like things and wanting to do all these Jesus-like things, and I still want to do all these things. But I think the job of president is so corrupted and is such a puppet show that I don't want to partake in that either. I feel that I could be a really good guide for the revolution so you guys aren't civil warring amongst yourselves, because you guys are primed to civil war amongst yourselves. I do not hear anyone saying, let's murder the child murderers. You just like, let's murder the pedophiles. And it's like, well, at least the pedophiles, like, they fucking, like, let the kids live, and I have to give them that. I have to give them that. If I'm going to be fair, all things said, I'm going to have to give them that. There was a bunch of weird sexual shit that happened to me. I don't really agree with it, but I at least, didn't receive the worst of it because I'm still here. I'm able to talk to people about it. I'm able to make videos about it. And I'm able to spread awareness in the way that I can. I don't agree with grabbing your pitchforks and torches because I think the Zionists have been doing this shit for hundreds of years in America. And they've captured and distorted a lot of your, cities and communities. And it's just like everywhere. And I don't want you guys civil warring over the pedophilia stuff because I really feel it's like half of America. Half the cops are in on it, half the FBI, half the CIA, half. And all your politicians, or mostly all of them. But it's safe to assume all of them, and then maybe know that there's a few that aren't, right? And people get caught up in Hollywood too because people don't just say that it's pedowood. It's pedowood, and now we know. Now we know. Now we can make a decision, whether to join it or not, and stuff like that. Yeah, not everyone in there, but I get you. If you want to assume that it's everyone, but know that it's not everyone. You could assume that it's a majority of people, but well, anyway. You could play your little mental games with that, but there's nothing I can do to change that. So I'm just going to, be less into the Hollywood stuff. I'm not going to watch their movies or shows and music as I have been doing since I've kind of, learned about this. I'm not into eating the child sacrificing stuff. I see that as the worst, and if you guys could get it right and not, get their look-alike or clone or something, then sure, you should execute child murderers. But see, you can't really be too sure, and that's why, I really, when I was doing the president thing, I was like, we gotta take him alive. We should have a take him alive thing. But that doesn't aid in the cover-ups and, people faking their deaths and everything where Epstein, or Palm Beach Pete is fucking running for mayor. And they're doing it right in front of your face. No one wants to fight back. No one wants to take one for the team. And yeah, and they're just, and then 1 million missing children per year, but you got to make it feel like you're doing something, so you might as well invent a situation to feel good about, which is very similar to masturbation,
You know, like, and yeah. So I'm going to try to participate in sex parties, and I'm not trying to be improper about it. Okay. You know, and they very well could, because I deal with this fucking spy shit. So they very well could sneak an underager in there and give them a fake ID that the doorman will say is okay. You know, and there, you know, people got me. And no, I wouldn't see that as a big got either, because I'm just like talking about it. And I dealt with the hijacking shit, because that's what they do to the presidents and everything. They try hijacking your mind with equipment, all right, and magic, believe it or not. And so yeah, because we live in a spiritual realm, and a lot of that magic shit is real. So yeah, I think a Robin Hood character where I could just kind of guide the revolution in a better direction. You know, let's grab our pitchforks and torches over child torturers and murders, right? I think the sexual stuff, a lot of it is can be okay when it's consensual, and maybe you guys should focus on the stuff that's not consensual, because that's a whole bunch of it right there. You know, and like I showed in that one video, that guy was like, oh my god, this is some concrete foundation. Is it? I just saw 3 fucking vents from that fucking thing. Is that a concrete foundation, or is that some like hidden fucking thing where kids are being kept, and you just fucking didn't even think? You didn't even think that that could have been that. You know, I'm like, I'm seeing a secret roof that's made to look like a foundation. You're seeing a foundation. You know, so anyway, I could be helpful, you know, especially to the light side, because things are so dark, and I am a balancer, so I'm often agreeing with the light side here about things. But I will give the dark side its bones and fairness when, you know, it's proper. And that's just that. Okay? I'm Mercury, bitches. Have a lovely day.